Topping today's news, amendments to the presumption of death bill. There's a new sheriff in town as the country gets a new commissioner of police, and the official opposition stages a silent protest. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jarino Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. Thanks for joining us. The House of Assembly resumed Wednesday morning with the parliamentarians in the lower chamber debating a bill for an act to amend the Evidence Act to provide for the presumption of death where a person disappears on circumstances of peril. It's the second reading and committal of the bill, with Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister, Miles LaRota, leading off the debate. Minister LaRota, who also holds responsibility for the Disaster Reconstruction Authority, acknowledges that while the Evidence Amendment Bill is short and seems inconsequential, the reality is that it has far-reaching significance and consequences. The bill being debated reduces the number of years families must wait before a missing loved one can be declared dead from 7 years to 2 years.
I can think of a number of circumstances of peril whereby a person may go missing. Sometimes the disappearance lasts for decades without any resolution. This is where the enactment of this piece of legislation becomes important. Sometimes, Madam Speaker, when a person vanishes into the proverbial thin air in circumstances of peril, that creates a myriad of challenges for the families and friends left behind. Madam Speaker, one of the purposes of this proposed amendment to the Evidence Act is to bring closure to the family and close associates of the person who would have disappeared in circumstance of peril. When a matter such as this remains unresolved, persons remain hopeful.
The bill comes as many families on Abaco, its Keys, and Grand Bahama, the Northern Islands, devastated by Hurricane Dorian, are still reeling from the monster storm, as well as missing family members who were swept away in storm surges never to be seen again. That's been nearly 3 years ago. Minister LaRota contends that it is his belief that the state should seek to help Bahamians who have missing family members get the closure that they need. And this is what this proposed amendment is seeking to do.
Each hurricane season, we will all be wondering, with a trace of fear, if something akin to Dorian will come again this year. And if it comes, will it come to our island? And if it comes, who will disappear in circumstances of peril? We cannot bury our proverbial head in sand and think Dorian was a fluke. With global warming continuing its sinister effects on our world, it is only a matter of time before another circumstance of peril comes. With this amendment to the Evidence Act, the survivors will be able to produce a legal document that says the person is dead in circumstances where they disappeared in peril, circumstances of peril. They will be legally entitled to get what is rightfully theirs. So, Madam Speaker, I take delight in moving this amendment to the Evidence Act. We are doing it because it is the right thing to do.
Also speaking on the Evidence Act to amend the length of time it takes to presume a person is dead from 7 years to 2 years, allowing family members to receive a death certificate, was opposition member for East Grand Bahama, Kwesi Thompson, who recounted the many horrific circumstances that took place during Hurricane Dorian, where many people lost their lives and have been presumed missing. Mr. Thompson says while the opposition supports the amendment, they are of the opinion that 2 years in some cases is still too long.
The law speaks to 2 years, and I seek to understand the reasoning and the rationale for 2 years as opposed to 1 year, or as opposed to 3 years. Where do we land and how do we land and get to the 2 year period? In the circumstances where a person has disappeared, and there is clear evidence that the person has disappeared. So, for example, there were circumstances where a person said, I saw my loved one, washed out to sea. I saw them where they were no longer with us. Should they have to wait 2 years? Why not 6 months? Why not a time frame that it takes to do a proper investigation, and then once a proper investigation is done, then they are able to apply? Even 2 years is a long period of time for persons to wait for a death certificate in these kinds of circumstances.
As we approach the 3rd anniversary of Hurricane Dorian, many who lost family members that were never found have still not gotten a death certificate, while there are some that have received death certificates. With that said, Mr. Thompson suggests there is already a mechanism in place to prevent it taking 7 years to presume someone is dead. He further suggests that the process can be made easier if the matters are heard in a magistrate court as opposed to the coroner's court.
We should be looking at things like, does every matter in these kinds of circumstances require a coroner? Shouldn't we also be looking at whether in these circumstances a matter like this could be dealt with by a magistrate? Now, I know it's a simple process, I believe, for a magistrate to be deemed a coroner or appointed a coroner, and then they would have all the powers and authorities of a coroner.
Mr. Thompson recounted many of the horrific circumstances that took place during Hurricane Dorian, where many of the people lost their lives and have been presumed missing, and the men and women that risked their own lives and continue to serve and help others while not knowing if their own loved ones were safe. Despite his critiques, Mr. Thompson says the opposition supports the amendment, which they see as very important. A new commissioner of police is at the helm of the Royal Bahamas Police Force today, following a swearing-in ceremony on Tuesday afternoon in the Rose Garden at the police headquarters. Former Deputy Commissioner of Police Clayton Fernando is now the new commander of the Royal Bahamas Police Force. Commissioner Fernando was sworn in as the 9th Commissioner of Police in an independent Bahamas, taking over from retired Commissioner Paul Roll. Commissioner Fernando, in his policing initiatives, promises a push for stronger penalties and a quicker response to crime, as he acknowledged he has assumed office at a time when the country is experiencing extreme increase in crime. But before he fully took on the role, he received this advice from retired Commissioner of Police Paul Roll as he demitted office.
Well, the reasoning it's clear, as though you could see the uprise, especially in the homicides. You are seeing 2-3 homicides a day. So that unit is mandate is to just to go after. The statistics is speaking to us and is telling us who the players are. So their focus and their strategy is to go out there to disrupt, and we have the intel which is working for us at the same time, so that we are able to build evidence to connect these individuals and put them where they belong, behind bars. I believe now the Bahamian people are tired. Every day, every night, they wake up, there's a murder, and especially our young men. We are losing our young men on both sides of the coins, as I said, as the victims and the perpetrator. So we are not only trying to go and try to arrest them, but we have another arm, which is the urban renewal program that we are trying to do to try to save these young men.
Commissioner Fernando says he is grateful for the opportunity to serve, adding that he is ready for the task at hand, and that is cracking down on crime in the country.
So when you look at an individual who is arrested today for possession of an unlicensed firearm, he goes to court, get bail, even when he's convicted, 2 years the most. Sometimes they even caution and just put back on the street. I believe that we need to send a message out there. We continue to talk about the proliferation on firearm smuggling that is getting into the hands of the criminal. So it has to be some deterrent.
That said, Commissioner Fernando highlights the various initiatives coming into effect, one of them the ceasefire unit.
To that end, I have approved and established the Law Enforcement Empowerment and Preparedness Program within the Urban Renewal Program. This program will assist potential recruits in realizing their goal of joining one of the law enforcement agencies in the Bahamas. It will assist individuals who are unable to pass traditional entrance examination with tutors and special training that will provide a chance and put them in contention.
There are also plans to have penalties increased for those caught by police with illegal firearms. Commissioner Fernanda says he believes if the penalties are increased, it will deter criminals.
Fernanda, it is a lonely road. I adopted some advice from Forbes now that I would like to offer to you, sir. Be equitable. Think systematically. Act authentically and reflect. Inspire followership. Collaborate. I wish to add two of mine. Insulate your family, and most of all, maintain an active prayer life. Success is not a destination. Success is a journey. The doing is often more important than the outcome.
As for improvements to manpower for the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Commissioner Fernanda says there have been hundreds of applicants that have sat the exam for the force, and although there were many who passed, there are still many that were unsuccessful. He says they are reviewing those unsuccessful applicants in order to provide them with an opportunity to continue their dreams. He says this preparedness program commenced on June 28th at the Marjorie Davis Institute for Special Education. Other initiatives in the Commissioner's policing plan include monthly meetings with all government heads, a special anti-firearms unit, a court dedicated to fast-tracking illegal firearms and ammunition cases for swift justice, and a domestic violence unit. Also created is a public relations unit for both the media and the public. As the Commissioner, as well as Commissioner Fernanda notes, there have been multiple complaints of the timelines that it takes to disseminate information on crime. Also created is a public relations unit for both media and the public. As Commissioner Fernanda notes, there have been multiple complaints of the timeliness of the dissemination of information on crimes. Commissioner Fernanda says this unit will put an end to that. The new commissioner is hopeful that all these initiatives will help to decrease the senseless violence in our country. Former Assistant Commissioner of Police Lemon Delaveau was sworn in as the Deputy Commissioner of Police at the Office of the Governor General today. Deputy Commissioner Delaveau says he is humbled by his position and appreciates the love he was shown.
Well, it always feels good when through the struggles you end up coming out on top. And so I'm very humbled by the love and respect shown to me and my family, by the public, and certainly by the media. The media kept calling me, checking and getting updates from us, and so I'm really humbled. I will continue to be humbled, but I will also like to thank the police officers of the Royal Bahamas Police Force for their prayers, their love, and also to being in public.
Deputy Commissioner Delaveau also responding to individuals questioning the timing of his appointment following the settlement of various lawsuits regarding him being sent on leave and then assigned to various government agencies during the previous administration. Delaveau says he is fully qualified and the claims that have been made are unfair.
I'm a conservative police officer. I've qualified myself. I came up through the ranks from constable straight to assistant commissioner before attaining this post. And so it would be unfair for anyone to say anything else otherwise. And so all of the other side chatters, I don't know anything of those, but I'm here to serve. And the Bahamian people, police officers, will see me for who I am, to serve the Bahamian people. That's what I'm here for. I'm about service. My whole life has been centered around service, and I intend to continue to serve the Bahamian people until the very last day.
Deputy Delaveau has been in the police force for 37 years and assistant commissioner since 2016. Former Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis hitting back at claims made by former Commissioner of Police Paul Rolle this past Friday as he demitted office. Commissioner Rolle appearing in his last episode of Royal Bahamas Police Force Cop Talk on Facebook said during his tenure as commissioner, he was faced with political interference by the Minnis administration. In response, the former Prime Minister had this much to say.
Say what I said before. From perhaps similar time, Finland, Ingram, Christie, the Commissioner of Police meets with the Prime Minister every Thursday, every week. Commissioner informs the Prime Minister of the state of the nation in terms of crime, position with respect to U.S. on certain matters, international matters, etc. These are all discussed in confidence, and those matters should always, any discussion between the Commissioner and the Prime Minister should always remain between the Commissioner and the Prime Minister, because the type of information that is given to the Prime Minister, he can never repeat such things. There are some information that are given to the Prime Minister cannot even tell some of his cabinet colleagues.
Dr. Minnis says as far as he is concerned, any conversation between himself and the Commissioner of Police, Commissioner Rolle, remains confidential. Prior to former Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis responding to political interference in the armed forces, Minister of National Security Wayne Munro says it wouldn't be surprising if there was interference, reminding that in Parliament, the former Prime Minister said he was prepared to infringe the Constitution. Former Police Commissioner Paul Rolle spoke out about potential interference with the previous administration, wanting him to sideline a number of senior officers, one of them being the new Police Commissioner Clayton Fernander.
And so it wouldn't be surprising that they did. The Commissioner of Police is very frank in what he said. I am able to say from personal knowledge, because when it happened to Assistant Commissioner Strawn, I represented him. When it started with the other ACPs, I gave them advice in terms of the litigation. Beyond Ferguson represented them. But I would have occasion to meet with the Commissioner of Police. He would entertain me. And it was clear to me from what he said that what was happening was directed and not by his choice. And the clear test of that is, you will recall that by the time the Prime Minister came to be sworn in, the ACPs had been reinstated.
When asked about how the police commissioner is expected to respond to instructions from the previous administration, Minister Munro says he should expect for that not to happen under the Davis administration, despite there being a push by Bahamians for the government to do the police's job, adding that the police commissioner is responsible for a policing plan and the government is only to provide the necessary resources.
As I have said, and the Prime Minister has also spoken about what is supposed to be the independence of the police commissioner, which we will not interfere with. The only way that the government ought to be able to have any input is if the commissioner asks for $100 million worth of resources and we say that the budget can only bear 80, because then that would be something where he would be able to say, this was my plan, this part of my plan was funded, this part of my plan wasn't funded. And then that will call politicians to answer a political question. When the public says that the Commissioner of Police told you he needed this to do this, why did you only give him this? And then we would have to justify it. That is how the positions interrelate to one another.
Minister Munro says the incoming police commissioner has informed him that saturation patrols will be strengthened, meaning more vehicles and manpower will be needed, with the minister assuring that the funding will be made available. We'll take a break here, and we'll be right back after these commercials.